Hello and a very warm welcome to our special presentation, Budget of Hope. The economic survey has already been presented. The survey provides a summary of the annual economic development across the country during a financial year. And to understand what corporate India wants, what industry wants from Budget 2021, I'm joined by Mr. Sanjay Aggarwal, President of PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Aggarwal, welcome to Rajya Sabha Television and thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure, absolutely.
So talking about the expectations from the upcoming budget. Of course, 2020 was an unusual year and uncharted territory for all of us, a severe exogenous shock that disrupted economies across the globe. What are the expectations of PhD Chamber and Commerce from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman?
The PhD Chamber has given a very comprehensive set of representations to the Finance Minister in the run-up to this Union budget. And I would like to share a few of the major recommendations with you here. The first and foremost expectation would be for the government to ensure the absolutely absolute importance on expenditure on the health infrastructure. Even the economic survey has recommended that at least 3% of the GDP must be spent on health infrastructure, and that is exactly what we have recommended to the finance minister in our budget recommendations. And this 3% is definitely required to make sure that the country is able to face up to any health emergency, as also to improve our health standards across the board. On a sustained basis, and that our health infrastructure should be comparable to economies of our size and heft. In addition to health infrastructure expenditure, we also need to make sure that we are able to double the number of medical professionals in our country in the next 3 years, which means doubling the number of doctors, doubling the number of nurses, and doubling the number of paramedicals in our country over the next 3 years by latest. This has become of prime importance because health, for example, medical education has been suffering because of the very high cost involved in setting up a medical college. At one estimate, I am told that for 100 seats, for medical education, you need something like 400 crores of expenditure into a medical college, which is not at all required. We have a large number of Indian students going abroad for medical studies. I have myself seen in a small country like Kyrgyzstan, part of ex-CIS countries, where I saw a single institution having more than 3,000 Indian medical students. So by simply making the education for health, so medical education so costly, we are denying the number of doctors that our country needs. Similar restrictions are there in terms of nursing colleges and other paramedical studies also, which need to be taken care of. So overall, infrastructure of health also needs to be taken care of in terms of, we need to get over this unfortunate situation where in the capital of the country, we have doctors who have not been paid their salaries for many months. So delivery of funding for both CAPEX and OPEX for medical infrastructure, which should be seamless and which should not be allowed to suffer from the vagaries of multiple authorities or channels of distribution, also needs to be ensured.
All right, sir. We've also ramped up our diagnostic and also our medical facilities considerably after the COVID-19 pandemic hit us. What are the specific measures that you're looking at for the primary, secondary and tertiary sectors as far as healthcare is concerned?
You see, as I said, firstly, of course, we need to increase the number or double the number of health professionals, whether it be doctors, nurses, or paramedics. In addition, we have to make sure that the CAPEX and OPEX requirements, starting from the primary health center to the district hospitals or the block level hospitals to the national level institutes, is all seamlessly connected and looked after. We should not have a situation where hospitals suffer from lack of finances, due to which you have those unfortunate cases where children die because of lack of oxygen in some of the state hospitals. All these things we need to make sure that there is a seamless delivery and a seamless administration of the complete health infrastructure, of the public health infrastructure. Because that is going to be, as even the economic survey points out, public health expenditure is going to save a large amount of money for the general and for the poor and the vulnerable part of the population. So that is something that would be very well spent into the economy.
All right, talking about the manufacturing sector, sir. The government has been talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, Make for the World. We already have the PLI scheme for 10 more sectors in place. Also, the fact that the government has been focusing on reduction of taxes, for instance, corporate tax. What are the other measures that the industry is looking at to make India a manufacturing hub?
Okay. As regards manufacturing, the PLI scheme is an absolutely wonderful scheme that has been announced by the government. The only expectation that the industry has is that maybe we could look at some more sectors to be added to the PLI scheme. Whatever we have achieved in terms of production of mobile phones, for example, and other electronic items which were originally covered under the first PLI scheme, I think has been a very great success. The 10 sectors announced now are again going to benefit immensely, and our request is that some more sectors need to be added to make sure that there is an all-round development of the industry in the country. Having said that, uh, one aspect of the PLI scheme that we would wish the government to reconsider would be the the need to invest, need for investment to be able to get the benefit of the PLI scheme, in the sense that there are some industries and some sectors which already have a large amount of excess capacity. So, in
Yes.
the first instance, they need to address their excess capacity. Once that excess capacity has been addressed, only then they should be expected to put in fresh investment. That is one. The next point is that on a, on a on a national scale, I would our main expectation is that the national infrastructure pipeline, 111 lakh crores that was announced by the finance minister on 31st December 19. Unfortunately, could not nothing could much could be done about it, because immediately following that announcement, more or less, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and due to which everything got stopped. But now the time has come, and even from what we see from the economic survey, the time has come to now make major investments into the economy. And what better than to have the projects which are already identified and enumerated in the national infrastructure pipeline. And only thing is that the original plan for the pipeline was to be a bit backloaded.
Yes.
Now that 1 year has gone, we have to aggressively make this expenditure to be front loaded. And that front loaded expenditure will come from central government investment into infrastructure. The state governments or the private sector shall follow once we have a substantial investment by the central government into the infrastructure projects. That by itself is going to create and multiply the demand in the economy, and which will attract the private sector to invest, and the states would also start getting the revenues they need to be able to invest. So, what is really important is for the nation to expend on national infrastructure, and for which we also need a DFI, development financial institution, or rather a mega development financial institution, is one of our strong recommendations that we must form. We earlier used to have three DFIs in the past. It should be IDBI, ICICI, and IFCI. All three of these slowly over the years converted themselves into banks. And that was the situation then. But in today's situation, when we need a very heavy expenditure into the infrastructure, what we require is a mega DFI to be formed. Let that be funded A by FDI in its equity. The government could have a golden share, and then we could invite sovereign wealth funds and pension funds, etc., to invest into the equity. So that would be a good amount of FDI. On top of that, we could have sovereign guarantee for both foreign exchange bonds, dollar bonds, and also rupee bonds. Once we do that, roughly 20-25 lakh crores of expenditure that we wish to do every year from the national infrastructure pipeline could potentially be easily raised, and that would have a huge impact, a huge positive impact to create a virtuous cycle in the economy.
All right, sir, shifting our focus a bit and talking about the agriculture sector. Now, policymakers, the industry is looking at rural economy for the revival after the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, the economic survey also said that agriculture has served as cushion for the economy. Talking about rural demand, the steps that the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry demands from the Finance Minister.
I think it's not about demands alone. What one has to understand is that agriculture sector has shown its resilience, has shown its strength. That this has been the backbone of demand during this very torrid times that we had during the pandemic. And the strength of our agricultural economy has actually helped the whole economy in a way to tide over the difficulties. And then after the first quarter loss of roughly 23.9% on GDP, we were able to reduce the gap substantially in the second quarter itself. And what we are expecting now is third quarter to be slightly positive, and then overall, hopefully, as we are seeing all around, even the economic survey puts a figure of around 7.5, 7.7% only being the negative part. So a major part of our strength is the agricultural economy. I think government has done something extremely proactive and extremely positive by enacting the farm laws.
Yes.
These reforms were very necessary to ensure that the farmer is not held hostage to middlemen or to some of the regressive holdovers from the earlier license Raj era. I think there are a lot of misapprehensions that are there among the farmers. I think there has been a lot of dialogue. We have unfortunately seen some not so peaceful protests also on the Independence Day. But our sincere hope is that just in case, even GST was a very contentious issue, the government was able to bring it around in such a way that there was a total consensus. And we really hope that there is a consensus that should be built up over the years. No, not over the years, sorry, over the coming months. I think
yes, sir.
This is going to be the main template for agricultural sector gaining strength. There's absolutely, I think, the right way to go.
Lastly, sir, talking about the startups. Now, the startup ecosystem in India has reinvigorated itself. Of course, the government has unveiled several policies, several measures for them. Budget 2021 for the startups in India.
See, as regards startup, the government has already been very proactive, and we absolutely appreciate the stand, the government policies that have resulted in our having now so many unicorns and more than 50,000 startups in the country. We need, of course, more and more measures to ensure that the funding available to the startups is made more and more easily available. You see, that is still a concern for startups. And one more area of concern that needs to be addressed is that why most of our startups end up having funding from foreign investors. These startups require much lower amount of funds. So maybe some sort of policy or schemes need to come up so that there is an institutional support to startups from the Indian banking sector, from Indian NBFCs and so on. Because this is not a good sign that 80% of the funding of our startups should be from foreign investors. The other thing, of course, is that we need to change our policies in respect of startups, which, for example, one important aspect is that while US and many other advanced economies allow the promoters of startups to hold golden shares by which they are allowed to, they can dilute their equity but still retain management control over their companies. That possibility has to be, that is not there in our country, and that should be positively considered and taken up. Because what we are seeing is that also encouraging some of our startups to domicile their companies outside India.
All right, sir. So those were the important points that you're making for the agriculture sector, for the startups, for reviving the growth, for investing to make sure that there is more of investment in the economy in our country. On that note, Mr. Aggarwal, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So that's all we have for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha TV.